There was a situation that came up in the Smash community lately that I want to use as an example so that we in the Splatoon community largely know how to deal with the same sort of behavior in the future. It pertains to a high-level Ganondorf player who recently got banned from the Melee community. In light of the recent events with IPL and the fact that I've been bringing on some new mods and training them recently, a lot of these kinds of thoughts have been on my mind pertaining to the Splatoon community. But also, as I've said in numerous previous videos, the Smash community is largely the mold the Splatoon community was made in. While the particulars of this issue are insular to Smash, and I'll spend a long time laying the groundwork before I even start talking about the Splatoon community, the general pattern of behavior is not. Communities of all kinds, gaming communities, sports clubs, neighborhoods, churches, are more or less safe than one another, not because of whether or not they contain harmful people, but because of how the communities deal with the harmful people in their midst. In fact, plausible deniability is something I really grappled with as a teacher as much as anywhere else. I will take a while to get to the particulars of the Smash community situation because there's a lot of context to get through first, but I promise we'll address it in time. The term plausible deniability may or may not be new to you, but I'll define it for the sake of those who don't know it. Plausible means basically possible but unconfirmed. It's something that we can only say for sure could have happened because we don't have any evidence to say that it actually did happen. Put together into the phrase plausible deniability, it refers to a condition where someone can deny something and that denial is plausible. It can't be proven that the person did something, and they've established that there is a plausible explanation of the events in which they didn't do it. If I eat a cookie I wasn't supposed to eat while my brother is in the house, there's plausible deniability because I can say, I don't know what happened to it, I guess my brother ate it. Unless we've got security cameras around the house, it's unlikely that my brother can prove I did it, and he'll also have the same kind of trouble proving he didn't do it. Kids learn about plausible deniability intuitively a long time before they ever actually learn the words plausible deniability. Kids learn how their parents work and when they get in trouble, and they'll play games to get what they want while avoiding the consequences called for by household rules. A rule is way easier to enforce when the kid understands why the rule's in place and agrees with it. That doesn't mean the kid won't break it, because self-control is hard and we don't give kids enough credit for working to learn it, but it might mean that they at least feel some remorse after breaking it, maybe apologize or admit to breaking it to clear their conscience, or maybe get punished for it once and then decide to stop breaking it as a result. If the kid doesn't really understand the rule, doesn't see how it has consequences outside of being punished by parents, hasn't made it their own personal rule inwardly and is just following it because of the risk of getting in trouble if they don't, that's when you see them start to make use of plausible deniability to break the rule and try to get away with it. If a kid knows you have your back turned while they were talking in class, if you turn to ask them to stop, they may claim it was someone else's voice you heard, even if that's a lie, because they know they have plausible deniability. They won't tell you who it was, who they claim was actually talking, because there are meaningful consequences for them if they throw someone else under the bus for something they did. But they'll claim they aren't telling you because they don't want to be seen as a snitch, a tattletale, so their plausible deniability is maintained. This sort of situation is a very common problem in classrooms. When kids hit puberty, all the rules that were based on the authority of their parents or teachers and not on what the kids actually believe start to lose their impact. And while some kids will understand why, for instance, it's draining and dysfunctional for everyone involved if people are talking the whole time a teacher's presenting information, it generally takes a few years for the whole cohort to come to that same understanding, to see the real consequences that the artificial consequences were there to reinforce the whole time. In this kind of context, it's easy to dismiss appealing to plausible deniability as just a sign of immaturity. But that's only because it pertains to getting away with the rules that a child is subject to. There are other rules we follow in society that are a lot more important and have more significant consequences for not being followed. Criminal courts, for example, operate under the assumption that a defendant is innocent until proven guilty, And while it could be said that this ultimately causes less harm than guilty until proven innocent, which would make it easier for, say, a government to wrongfully punish its citizens, both philosophies have flaws, ways that they can arrive at an unjust outcome. Plausible deniability is a flaw in the innocent until proven guilty system. There are some really terrible crimes that are difficult to prove. And so sometimes a truly evil act not only goes unpunished, but then the perpetrator tries to, say, countersue the victim for slander, or uses people's ignorance to convince others that not being 100% proven guilty means they were wrongfully accused, leading to harassment, all of this being on the basis of plausible deniability. Establishing plausible deniability can, in theory, be used in positive ways as well, in the case where a rule or an authority structure is unjust. It's something a person should be slow to do and think carefully about, but if the powers that be are doing something wrong and we don't have direct overwhelming leverage over them, sometimes these kinds of resistance are necessary. But it's certainly better for everyone involved to avoid that situation in the first place, to conscientiously object to a rule in good faith before breaking it, rather than to risk being dismissed as someone who's just never going to agree, who isn't on the leader's side for personal reasons of their own. It takes more maturity to say, I think the rule is wrong, before you break it, or to say, I broke the rule, but I don't believe that what I did was wrong and here's why. Or, I broke the rule and I realize now that what I did was wrong and I apologize, than to lie and waste people's time. Only when you know that your argument won't be reasonably considered do resistance tactics like that have a place. Now imagine that you want to do something evil, or something you don't think is evil, but that you know society at large thinks is evil. Plausible deniability is your best friend. It wasn't you who hurt that person. You left the room, someone else came and did it, and then left through a window. And you had just come back when the witness saw you standing over that person. There are ethical uses for deception, but whenever you approach something unethical, something really wrong, you will inevitably find an intricate 3D spiderweb of deception surrounding it. Evil hides because, exposed, it would be rooted out. Often, for example, when an injustice is brought to light, the parties involved in creating that injustice seize the language used to describe that injustice and use it to argue that they, in fact, are the ones being repressed. They'll play devil's advocate and amplify that voice using deceptive tactics, capitalizing on its own controversy to get the message further than it deserves to go. The goal isn't even so much to make a claim and die on that hill, but to create a general air of uncertainty surrounding the issue. As soon as something is controversial, and a news network has to report what both sides of the controversy are saying, it seems like there's more legitimacy to the bad faith claims, and people are less certain that opposing them is the right course of action. The more there can be plausible deniability, the more bad actors can get away with. A part of the plan may even be to totally convince some people that their bad faith arguments actually hold weight. With the benefit of hindsight, I feel pretty comfortable referring to the events known as Gamergate as a misogynistic harassment campaign. I saw it develop in a Facebook group in the Melee community, how people used detached irony so that when they made a vile claim about, say, the role of women in gaming communities, as soon as anyone stood up against it, they'd try to backpedal and say it was a joke, not to be so sensitive, call that person a white knight who themselves wasn't really a feminist, but just wanted women to like them. The goal was for people to stop speaking up against it so that what was presented as a parody of bad beliefs, something that plausibly would be acceptable, actually masked that people really held that unacceptable sentiment unironically, allowed them to say it out loud, and that it looked like it went unchallenged. Seeing it that often going unchallenged would desensitize people to it, slowly normalize it, maybe eventually get them to act on it. At any stage in this process, people holding these extreme beliefs, who at this point knew they were on the same page with each other, could make a plausible argument that they were not in fact misogynistic, and that any claim of theirs that would support such an accusation was just a meme, bro. But taken as a whole, having spent any time in that Facebook group and seen who was making those posts and how often, it would slowly occur to you that someone who really opposed misogyny probably wasn't going to make that many posts on that particular subject in that particular way. It's generally through empathetic imagination that we poke holes in plausible deniability arguments. Look at someone who actually parodies a misogynist as a joke and think about how and why they would do so. They're going to do it as a one-off tweet or something that exaggerates an obvious logical fallacy in that statement for someone to pick up on. The rest of their body of work will show that they support the contrary position. They're not going to develop a whole AU around this persona. They're not going to obsess about one particular woman in the community, alternate between mockingly deifying her and demonizing her, make every joke you write about her for weeks and months, echo anti-feminist talking points without any reason that a feminist doing a parody would have for repeating them. Any individual one of those actions you can call a meme, but if you look at the pattern of behavior and think, why would someone do this? It becomes less and less plausible that this person actually has healthy, well-meaning intentions regarding women. Another common tactic for establishing plausible deniability is to use people who are actually more innocent than you are as a part of your movement. This is something that Gamergate accomplished very effectively. Obviously, no one is going to get behind a movement that calls itself a harassment campaign, so Gamergate beefed up its marketing by making a counterclaim that it was a movement intended to improve ethics in games journalism. People can broadly get behind that idea. Game reviews often feel like they're in the pocket of developers, because how is that AAA big money blockbuster of a game that so many people universally hate getting such good reviews from X, Y, and Z websites? It seems like a reasonable issue to speak up about, and people are willing to speak passionately about that. Thing is, the ethics in games journalism idea in Gamergate came from a false accusation. People claimed that a game review score was being artificially inflated on the basis of a romantic relationship. That never happened. And it's well proven that it never happened. And it wasn't the real point of the movement, which was to attack notably feminist women in high positions in the gaming community. The idea someone slept with a reviewer to get a better review spreads faster than here's all the proof, including screenshots, that that story is untrue and has been used as an excuse to harass the game developer. And organizers of the movement knew this. Now, among the many people who were deceived by the story, if there are a few people who were never really deceived by the story and just wanted an excuse to join in the en masse harassment of an innocent person, it was very easy for them to look just like the otherwise harmless people who were simply deceived by a rumor. They could look at how those people responded to being confronted and just blend right in by copying and pasting their responses. With so much of an uproar, so many people becoming unreasonably angry, how is one to track down an anonymous alt account on social media they never used again, that said horrible things to the victim in one message ever before being blocked, and then making a new alt they never used again to do the same thing? You have more people than just your little brother to blame for taking that cookie. You have thousands and thousands of people on the internet, all hidden behind aliases, without much of a single central authority to hold accountable for the actions of all of them or any number of them. While it may in fact be true that the vast majority of people who ever aligned with Gamergate had no intention of the primary victims being harassed, it's important to realize that they were still wrong to be involved. Being in that sphere, they became camouflage for evil behavior. The movement, which had been all about harassment from the beginning, had such a huge built-up disguise composed of people taking its rhetorical bait that the main purpose of the movement, harming some vocal feminists, could be disguised as a few bad apples getting out of line. Any individual Gamergater could simultaneously use the hashtag and ideology that was being used to harass people and claim, I'm not with those guys, and how dare you suggest they represent me? And a lot of them even meant it. 3.5 pages of script later, we finally arrive at the Smash community situation. I told you it'd take a while. Smash player gets banned from a whole bunch of different regions, including his home region, on the basis of having used an alt account to post transphobic, racist, and otherwise bigoted arguments. Basically, his main account was PC, while his alt account showed his true colors, and those true colors were like the ugliest, most eye-scarring gradients you've ever seen in your life. He was also found to be competing in an event that explicitly allows for banned players to compete. So like the event would permit someone to enter even if they had recently committed violent felonies. People who have devoted a lot of time and energy to a competitive game don't want to be banned from competing. In the Splatoon community, we've had issues in the past with banned players sneaking into tournaments using alt accounts, or with strong players continuing to play with and give practice to players they know are banned. This event is the Smash community's version of that problem, and this guy was an active part of it. Banned Guy made a long post on Twitter using his Twitter Blue subscription, or whatever they're calling it now, and I want to point out the rhetoric he's using because it is a case study in creating plausible deniability at every opportunity. I want us to see this and understand how it works, so that if our banned players ever try pulling something like they've tried in the Smash community, the community that is our model, the older, more experienced version of us, we promptly see it for what it is and ensure it gains no traction. Dear Smash community, I played in Banned Players Tournament under that tag, which I'm not going to read here, and I did at one point use the Discord account to have a conversation in the Banned Players Tournament server. That account on Twitter and Discord, which is the alt account we're talking about, is accessible to multiple people. It's definitely a meme account on Twitter in many ways. The first section really diminishes how involved he seemed to be with the tournament for banned players. He, at one point, used the account to have a conversation. He also casts doubt on how much the account really represents him, claiming that it's accessible by others. Mind you, he never claims that it wasn't him that wrote any of the bad stuff. If you were wrongly accused, wouldn't you at least think to say, I used it, but I didn't say anything bigoted? We also have the typical Gamergate-looking claim that it's a meme account, which does nothing to excuse the harmful rhetoric. He provides no evidence to claim the bigotry is ironic or a parody. Even if he weren't a major contributor to it, the fact he associates with it at all is unacceptable, like we established when we talked about not becoming camouflage for a bad faith actor. Quote, I could try to defend myself and appeal any incoming bans, but that isn't what I'm interested in doing at all, unquote. He could defend his actions, implying there is a reasonable defense for his actions. He's just not going to tell you what that defense is. Forgive my distrust, but I'm going to assume there isn't a convincing defense for these actions if he's not going to come forward with it publicly. Because remember, empathetic imagination. If you're wrongly accused of something, is your first impulse not to immediately and earnestly defend yourself? Imagine responding that way when your parents confront you about taking a cookie. Well, I could tell you why it wasn't me that took the cookie, but I'm not interested in that at all. Okay, well, you're still grounded. Quote, I wish my fellow competitors the best. I will miss competing with you gravely. Because I am leaving the mainstream community to go work on an alternate space for Smash and esports, unquote. Big reveal, massive drama, whoa, that's not what anyone expected. Quote, this may come as a shock, but I find this action necessary and obvious. More and more people are being squeezed out of the scene because the community is becoming very exclusive, unquote. I've said this before and I will say it again. Banning harmful people from the community makes the community more inclusive, not exclusive. In a case of abuse or harassment, you either ban the abuser or you will never see the victim in your scene again. You will effectively ban one or the other. One of those parties is innocent, while the other may well choose to abuse someone else and remove yet another innocent person from the scene. Therefore, the least exclusive choice to make is to ban the perpetrator. The only people the Smash community is excluding are those who would drive more people away and make everyone less safe. This is the single most inclusive form for a community to take. But remember, a tactic of those who have to hide is to take the language of social justice and use it to make themselves out to be the victims instead. Now, maybe there's an attempt to create plausible deniability here, that maybe, quote, alternate space for Smash and esports, unquote, doesn't just mean a place for banned players. But we'll see later that he refers back to that community of banned players as an example of the kinds of folks he wants to give a chance. So I reject that notion based on his own language. Quote, I will provide exciting entertainment and interesting storylines, leading a new community to a fresh path. Don't worry, I'll still be putting out more content, competing in multiple games, and sharing my love for esports and self-betterment. A lot of my involvement and interaction recently with Banned Players Tournament members is due to my distaste with how the Smash scene and other esports communities are run. I've felt myself constantly conflicted with different banned players' situations and verdicts. The system by which Smash decides to ban players is flawed and often causes irreparable damage, unquote. Many of these players were banned for directly causing irreparable damage in other people's lives. Being banned from a video game community is not worse for them than what they've done to other people. The wording also casts doubt on the system, claiming that the decision to ban them might be flawed, without presenting any evidence besides "trust me, bro," that any of the bans were wrongly decided. Oh, it's just that he's not interested in backing up his claim that they were wrongly decided, not that he couldn't if he wanted to. Quote, I could not sit and do nothing as others had their dreams stripped away due to gossip or lies in many cases. I reached out to them, learned their stories, and asked them how they were treated, and felt their pain, unquote. More of the same rhetoric here. He invites you to empathetically consider what it would feel like to be wrongly accused without providing evidence that anyone was actually wrongfully accused, and puts the perpetrator's feelings over the feelings of their victims. Quote, the experiences I had with the people in the scene are real. The love I have for the game, the hard work that people put in, the passion people have is real. I will never stop improving as a person, improving at telling the truth, and improving as a speaker and competitor. Much love, and yes, Godspeed! See you soon, unquote. One of the elements of his plausible deniability is that he's building a narrative around himself of self-improvement, optimism, passion, dreams, many of the positive traits people look up to in a competitor. None of this statement actually addresses that he spread harmful ideas associated with harmful people, and generally was not behaving in a way that is conducive to everyone else in the community improving themselves as they passionately work toward their dreams with optimism. Much love, but not for trans people or black people or a variety of other people. And this goes without saying, I hope, but he will not, in fact, be seeing us soon, because this statement, that isn't at all an apology, did not sway any of the tournament organizers one iota, and he remains very much banned from the Smash community. It's very clear whose side he's on. Many of the other folks, who are well known to be banned for egregious misbehavior in the community, vocally supported this player, while everybody who responsibly holds a position of authority in the community roundly condemned this. If he really wasn't on the side of harmful people, they wouldn't be the ones defending him. If he really just made a mistake and did not hold harmful beliefs, this statement would have looked much different, as we've already established by imagining what we would say if we were being wrongly accused. Becoming a better person is a process of learning, and learning is a process of screwing up and learning from your mistakes. People do make mistakes sometimes, and there should be enough nuance in a lot of cases to confront people about their mistakes, but also to allow them to stay and learn from those mistakes and be better. But there are some acts that nobody makes by mistake. And there are some acts that people are warned about so repeatedly in so many places that there's no excuse for someone not to know they're wrong. Also, a video game community is not some essential resource a person is being cut off from. You don't need competitive Super Smash Bros. Melee tournaments to live. What you've done to deserve a ban from it is more harmful to others than having that experience taken away is for you. Even ignoring that fact, when you look at this statement, this player describes no intent to learn from any of this. This is not an apology. It's not an explanation. It's not a reflection. It implies that they didn't do anything wrong, and that rather than being banned for bad behavior, they just view it as deciding, totally unprompted by a coordinated international ban, mind you, to step away and form an alternate community and just keep going someplace else. So fine, he name drops self-improvement, but clearly no self-improvement is happening as a result of this decision. What he's trying to do instead is minimize the consequences for his actions. He doesn't care about why he wasn't supposed to eat that cookie, or why it was wrong to blame his brother for what he did. He just doesn't want to get in trouble.
Imagine a world, Raiden, free of cancel culture, where no one can call me out for my outlandish claims. A world where I can say the N-word.
Sadly, that part of the line is relevant. That alt account did actually say the N-word. As I've said before, the best case scenario when a player is banned is that they vanish, nameless to everyone but the TOs who have them on a ban list, forgotten and moved on from. That's why I'm not saying the player's name or the account's name or the name of the banned player's Discord. I'm not looking to make it easy for like-minded people to join them there. Still, I bring it up here because there will undoubtedly be situations in the future where banned players try to reach out for public support and use tactics like these to try and build a sympathetic audience. Bad faith actors in all sorts of communities have been emboldened in recent years and learned new tricks. I just hope that when they surface from the bottom of the internet's dumpster, we remember to do the following things. Test their plausible deniability by putting yourself, an innocent person, in their shoes and seeing if their behavior makes sense. Pay very close attention to what they do and don't back up with evidence. And finally, maybe most importantly, if you know that someone in your orbit is behaving in a harmful way, do not allow yourself to become their camouflage. Don't let them hide behind you. If there's someone in your life who you're worried about, who has problematic ideologies, something you can do is talk to them. Speak to them directly, not to your Twitter audience about them, not to people who want to hear about what they call drama, even though others might call it trauma. This is not for internet points. It's for mitigating real-world harm. Talk to them person to person and tell them that their behavior isn't okay and exactly how you expect them to change it. Don't give them any room for plausible deniability. Challenge them until they're forced to choose between changing their behavior or not. If they refuse, don't be their shield. Don't keep hanging out around them and letting them use your better reputation. We have TOs and other community leaders who can make very prompt ban decisions provided evidence, and Splat Safety who can investigate serious cases of misconduct to confirm that the right decisions were made around a community ban. Make the right friends, keep your friends accountable, and above all, keep yourself safe out there. We're very safe as gaming communities go, but that is in part because we take these kinds of situations seriously and think about how to handle them before they happen. It's a part of being the best people that we can be. And that's really all that we're about anyway.